Okay. So that was about coalescence and how that works in gene tree species tree. Now we're going to go into speciation itself. Okay. So with speciation, there are two big questions. What starts speciation and what maintains current species? Okay. Yeah, let's keep going. And so these barriers are often talked about as prezygotic and postzygotic. What does that mean? What's a zygote? Yeah, fertilized egg. Right? So egg, haploid, sperm, haploid, connects, DNA merges, and zygote. Okay. So with speciation, think about prezygotic barriers and postzygotic barriers. Okay. So stuff that happens before connection and stuff that happens after. Right? You'll see why in a few minutes. But what we want you to do is break up into small groups and try to figure out what some of these barriers could be. Okay, it's often good to think of like a real example. So think about like, you have two squirrels. What can keep them from mating? What can keep their offspring from surviving or doing like that, right? To keep them as separate species. Well, barriers to keep things from things that come out of speciation. All right, let's start. So what are some ideas? Okay. Behavior? In what way?
If it's a species natural behavior to
kids may not, may not explain it because, lots of them don't interview their siblings and stuff from species, but behavior like not responding to signals properly, people being out from time of day.
What about birds that like help with the nest? Because don't some birds do that and they have that people's nest rather than mate and make their own?
That's like why they might not breed in that generation, but why that creates two different populations. You want a population of things that don't breed, but that does illustrate some of the things about game theory. Why would you bother helping someone else? Why not help yourself? The idea is that you want to produce more offspring, or gives your genes more offspring to do that way. So we get to that, but in this case, it's not. Okay, how so?
Like the wool bath backfield. They killed the male sex cells.
Yeah.
So you can breed, but you don't breed.
Yeah, so Blackbeard is, and actually, the one thing to go through we'll talk about this in the Blackbeard is really cool. Bacteria infect insects, things that can turn male insects female. They do things like they will only allow male fertilize females that also have a Blackbeard. They will turn the Blackbeard and allow fertilize.
I think that the example in snails, but it could be like the size and shape that prevents reproduction. Are the ones that like normal newborn species like
Yep. Mating morphology change. Good. What else? It's very hard for a squirrel. Usually we do a squirrel and something like that. What else? Infertile hybrids, right? You could make them infertile. Yep, I'll get into that soon.
That's a postzygotic?
That's postzygotic, right? So you mate, they can sperm, start using offspring that grows up, and you can have offspring that don't.
We could also have like fertilization occur that there'll be a mutation or something that would not survive.
Yeah. What else? It relates to this. In what way? Sexual selection? Yeah. Let's cool. Yes, sir. Ask me a question. Yeah, this is a very good list. So here's the canonical list, and you can see how yours relates actually very well to it. So physical or temporal isolation. So we got physical. Temporal is like, I only mate in the spring, you only mate in the fall, or I only mate at night, you only mate during the day. Okay. Lack of proper mating cues. Okay. So again, I'm doing this, and the tree's saying, I don't care what you're doing, I'm not finding you sexy. Okay. Mechanical problems. Again, me versus the tree. Gametic problems. Okay, and then postzygotic issues like hybrid inviability, which we're doing that with like the embryo death. It could also be that the hybrids aren't well adapted to the environment. Right? If you have a bird that has large beaks for getting large seeds, and other species that have small beaks for getting small seeds. Maybe their offspring has medium beaks that get no seeds. Or hybrid sterility. Okay, so physical or temporal isolation. So here we have lions and tigers that don't co-occur, and when they come together in a zoo or something, you can have ligers or tigons, depending on which one's the mother. Right? And one really cool aspect of this is these are the biggest cats on the planet. Because these hybrids are bigger than either parental species. Okay? You might learn more about that later on when we talk about genetic imprinting and things like that. It's really amazing. Yeah? The derpy?
I was actually I mean, are they like successful?
I mean, yeah, I mean, they survive through adulthood. I'm not sure if they're fertile.
Okay, well, I guess just going on that, like, if they have any problems other than the infertility, like, are they one of them lower mental capacity, joint problems?
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm not sure.
One of them, I can't remember if it's the light or the timeline, but one of them who's actually got a known condition on its growth, huge growth, and stuff. And so there is a point at which it physiologically cannot handle
Yeah.
the size of the components. That's generally
Okay.
if we bred enough of them, would there eventually be a mutation in one that would make it not infertile or allow it to reproduce?
So that's a good question. I mean, and a big question in general evolution is like, could something evolve, right? And probably as a function of how much time you put into it, but also what the genetic variability is. If there's no variability, so for example, if the problem is non-matching chromosome number, and some of this always fails, right? Well, there is some variation in chromosome number, so possibly you could get that, but if it's a twofold difference, maybe you won't get that very easily. And so maybe it will never happen. Right, so what has is this additive genetic variation. So, and I don't know about in this case. Other questions? People like this example, huh?
We have to do to
Okay,
really
another example is lack of proper mating cues. Right, so here we see a bird of paradise, right? And to a female of the species, this is incredibly sexy. Right? To any other species on the planet, this is just really bizarre. I'm backing away now, right? So lack of proper cues there. Most species don't recognize this as a mating dance. Okay, and so you have some divergence, and this mating dance evolves.
She retires.
The females in that group might recognize it as a mating dance, but the other, the temporarily isolated group might not recognize it as a mating dance.
It's hard not to feel.
Mechanical problems. So, here a case of bruchid beetles, okay? And check out this huge, leg, and it has very strong leg muscles. And the purpose of those leg muscles isn't to jump, okay? It's to throw the male off, okay? And so when they mate, the male's penis actually has spikes that come out and scar the female, okay? And what happens is he wants her to have all his offspring. He doesn't want her to remate. Right? So his advantage is if all her offspring come from him. Right? And after that, he doesn't either anymore. And so by scarring it, scarring her oviduct and things, she has to then produce offspring quickly and lay eggs, and then can't mate anymore. And so, all the offspring are his, and then it aligns her interest in that if she wants to have the most offspring she can, she has to put all her energy into his eggs, right, and release them. Whereas if she were unscarred, she could have some offspring with him, and then go off and find a different male and have some offspring with him, and so forth. But now it's going to be her only chance, so she has to put all of it into his. Okay, and so you can imagine, this arms race where so her advantage is to be able to reproduce multiple times, right? So she'll have hardened plates and behave like throwing him off with her legs to help promote this, and he'll have counter behaviors, stronger tarsi and spike in different positions. This is an arms race, right? And you can imagine in different groups, the arms race go different ways. So in this species, might have, a spike in a plate. Different species might have a spike somewhere else in a different plate. When they try to mate, then they're mating with things that are protected and could actually die. Okay, Drosophila do the same thing with, rather than with spikes, so they use chemical means. Okay, questions?
That's not a conscious decision. Why do they not
The chance of them remating with that same female are low. Right, so the male's gonna mate with that female. She mate with someone else, but it will be probably someone else. Right, so if that male can have the female have, 20 eggs from him, rather than 10 eggs from him and 10 eggs from someone else, or 10 eggs from him and 15 eggs from someone else, then it's to his advantage. And so males that can promote this are selected for it. Yeah, good question. Yeah, and even if this makes the species as a whole have fewer offspring, so maybe without this she could have 10 eggs and then 10 eggs and 10 eggs and 10 eggs. Maybe with this she can have 15 eggs and then it's done. So as a species of having more offspring, it'd be better to have 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. But for that male, it's better to have 10 only. And if he's winning the arms race, that's what happens. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, gametic problems, another issue. So what does this plot show? Okay, so first thing you should do when you're interpreting something like this is look at the axes. Right? So number of offspring produced. Right? So bigger is better. Okay. Native versus foreign. And so here we have two different populations, and here we have them mating with members of their own population with members of their own population. Okay? And they're different populations. So what's a general trend? Right. So if you mate with things that come around you, you have more offspring, that's why it's selected to be native. Right, exactly. Okay? With some exceptions. I'll just mess it up. Right? So it suggests, though, that if you could, so this is some sort of genetic problems in that you produce more viable offspring if you mate with something native to where you are. Okay? And this is in the common garden, so it's not sexual nature, it's just in a lab that happens. Another issue is hybrid inviability. Okay, here we see two toads of different species mating, and all their sort of deformed tadpoles. Right, so there's some that never metamorphose, they just become giant tadpoles. Okay, and then we have some have various other deformities. Tadpoles. And so they're not viable. These are, of course, in the lab, but there are, you do sometimes find this sort of hybrid tension zone where different species meet. Yeah. There's some famous ones with some, I think it's fire-bellied toads in Europe. We have crickets in North America, where you have different species, and when they meet, they haven't really adapted to not mate with the other one. Right? You imagine there's selection for it, right? Because if I mate with someone of a different species, I'll have messed up kids. Right? So if I can somehow better differentiate and better choose only ones of my species, I'll do better. There's selection for that. That selection only happens at the margins of the range, not throughout the whole population. Hybrid sterility. Okay, so a male donkey has 62 chromosomes, a female horse has 64 chromosomes, so the mule, has 63. Right, it gets 31 from one parent and 32 from the other parent. Okay, so when it's time to have meiosis, right, and have the chromosomes line up and go into the eggs and sperm, they don't line up properly. Okay, and so you don't have viable eggs or sperm. Okay.
So,
yeah.
What if you did balance the numbers to originally not be viable?
Even with an even number, it might not be viable. So I could have one parent with 2 and one parent with 4. Right? It's possible that this 4 is this one's going to 2, this one's going to 2. So it might match up, but probably doesn't have a point of analysis. Good question. So here's the big question. We'll stop at this point. Dobzhansky-Muller Incompatibilities. Right? So many things being selected for in nature. Right? Is there ever selection for having fewer offspring, or being, or being incapable of breeding something? Right? If I'm breeding something, I'm either wasting my time or I'm going to have offspring. Right? With some exceptions for like learning and play and things like that. But in general, things are selected for having offspring. Okay. So how do genetic traits that lead to not being able to have offspring can evolve? How can that happen? It seems like you're going down this fitness valley. And these two gentlemen were part of the modern synthesis that united the PopGen with Macroevolution to figure this out. And it's called the Dobzhansky-Muller Incompatibilities. How does this work? So we have the ancestral species being AABB. Okay? And I have some sort of barrier. So I have things on both sides of the barrier. Okay? And I can then have a mutation on this side and have A become a little a. Okay? And this could be advantageous, could be neutral. Okay? And at some point I can end up with AABB. Now if this A didn't work well with big B, we wouldn't have survived. This has to be neutral. There is the deleterious mutation that will get fixed, but let's assume neutral. Okay? So the only way this survives is if it doesn't hurt. It works okay with big B. Over here, in the same thing. Right? And A, little b. And again, little b has to be able to look at big A. But now when they come back together, I could have AA, big B, like that. This little a has never seen a little b, right, through evolutionary time. We've had no information about how well they work together. And it could be that together they're lethal. Right? Not. Right? And then we don't look at that. Right? But sometimes it could be. If it is, then that's one way of getting lack of lethal. The offspring are inviolable because of these compatibilities. Okay? It's a very cute, simple model when you think about it, but it seems to work. And what sometimes it's working on now is actually finding where are these genes to identify a speciation gene. Any questions about this? We'll pick it up again on Monday for speciation.